Welcome to Manga Historian's Complete Story Series. Today we're going to be continuing our story of Berserk, starting with Chapter 80. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Where we last left off, the eclipse had happened and everyone was dying, but Guts refused to accept that this was Griffith's wish. He was pushing forward, trying to stop Griffith from his actions, and that was when everyone saw the Skull Knight and Zod. Rickard starts to get closer to the two, and then he begins to hear Zod talking. He tells the Skull Knight that he knew that he would show up. They've been fighting for thousands of years. The Skull Knight tells him that he was assigned to be the Gate Watcher, but Zod says that he's not interested in that. The only thing he wishes for is to meet the strong, old friend. The Skull Knight says how Void is always preaching about the things that you cannot avoid, but this place is as good as any to wield my sword. Back inside of the vortex, Casca watches as another soldier is eaten in front of her, and then the monster opens up its mouth, aiming for her. As it plunges forward, Pippin jumps in, knocking it back. Pippin tells Casca to get out of here, and he begins holding off the monster's attacks. She tries to tell him no, but Judo rides up on his horse, picking her up. She shouts that they need to go back, but as Judo looks back at Pippin, he throws 2 daggers at the monster and he continues to run. Casca starts screaming, hitting him, telling him they have to go back, but Judo tells her that it's no use. She needs to survive now. She's the general and she will live longer. Judo begs for her not to let the Hawks end, but as Casca looks back, she sees the monsters begin to overpower Pippin and then eat away at him. Across the field, another monster starts to devour some of the Hawks, while Corcus is watching. The soldiers call for him, but Corcus begins running, trying his best to get away. But before he can get too far, the monster reaches out, clawing away at his back, trying to stop him. He tries to swing his sword to keep them away, but then he trips, and he begins to roll down the hill. He looks up to see more monsters with bodies hanging from their mouths, stuck between their teeth. He gets back up and he begins running again until finally, there's nothing. There's nowhere to go. He tells himself that this is all a dream. Even though these wounds hurt, it must all be a dream. Everything was just so good. It's just a very long dream. He then sees a naked woman in the distance and he looks. And as he looks, the woman offers herself to Corcus. Then he tells himself, why not? It's all fake anyway. He grabs the woman and he buries his face into her chest and her body begins to change. Then her mouth begins to open. Back with Judo, him and Casca continue on their path, running by all of the monsters with body parts scattered amongst the field. Casca asks herself, what is all of this? Did they sin this much? Or was this nightmare what Griffith wanted all along? She calls out for Griffith to answer her, but as the monsters attack, Judo cuts its throat, and then he receives a wound in return. Another monster begins to run towards them, and Judo throws another set of daggers, stopping it. Casca calls out that there is one on the right, and the monster bites down at Judo's arm. She quickly grabs a dagger off of his belt and stabs into the back of the monster until it releases his grip. Judo says that she saved him, but as Casca looks back, she sees his arm is ripped apart. She begins to cry, stating that they should have stayed back there. This way they could have all died together. And Judo tells her to shut up. This is just a fight to the death. He forces a smile, stating, well, that's what he'd say. She nods and the two of them continue to ride, and then a shadow begins to get closer and closer. And then out of the ground, the shadow rises and it opens its mouth, biting off the horse's legs. And the two of them fall. Another monster begins to open up its mouth and tendrils begin to whip around. Judo steps in front of Casca, taking the hit. And as it continues to flail its tendrils, Judo leans over Casca, trying his best to protect her. She begs for him not to do this. He can't die like this. And then she sees the 2 tendrils stab through his back and come out of his chest. He tells her, to the very end. And then he grabs a hold of the tendrils and he throws a knife back. She leaps, grabbing a sword, slashing at the monster, killing it. And then she runs back over to check on Judo. As he tells her that it was his last knife, she needs to go. Tears begin to pour down her face and she tells him that she won't. They're supposed to keep moving to the very end, right? She then picks him up, stating that he can cry all he wants, but he's coming with her. As she carries Judo, he begins to watch as she talks. And her words begin to fade. And as her eyes begin to close, he tells her that he's glad that he was able to see her cry, and she thought of him as useful. She calls out to Judo as his body goes limp and heavy. She tries to shake it off, but more monsters begin coming towards her, and soon she finds herself surrounded. Casca grabs Judo's sword and she runs in swinging. But her swing is suddenly stopped, and as she looks, one of the monsters catches the blade in its mouth, and it bites down on the sword. More and more monsters begin to surround her, all stating that she is the sacrifice. One asks if they can eat her, and the others state that it's that time. So the monsters grab a hold of Casca, and they begin ripping and tearing away her armor and her clothing. With the demons attacking Casca, Guts fights off what he can using the broken dagger that he had when he tried to free Griffith from his cocoon. After grabbing a hold of a demon, he slams the broken dagger down on the demon's horn, and breaks that off. As the horn flies, Guts takes it and jumps onto another demon, slamming that horn into its face. With more and more demons appearing, Guts continues fighting his way, stabbing everything in his path. Blood begins to fly as more demons fall before him. But off in the distance, the female god hand Slain watches. She says that this man is displaying quite a bit of strength strength. But if he lives, how long could he live with anguish? His existence shall become an unquenchable despair. All the while that Guts is fighting, Griffith continues to sit in his cocoon, slowly changing into something else. Back outside, Guts continues fighting off the demons as they keep replacing themselves with the new ones from the Horde. He goes on and the fight begins to take its toll on his already wounded body. But as he looks back at Griffith, the demons continue to appear, and using what strength he has, he pushes through fighting. Meanwhile, in Griffith's cocoon, he begins to see visions of everyone's death. These deaths pass through him. It is what he desired, and even so, he feels nothing. Outside, the fighting drags on, and still Guts fights as many demons as it takes to get free. But as more demons show up, they force Guts back from the top of the tower. Before falling, he takes the horn and he rams it into the wall to slow his descent down. But the force is too great and he ends up tumbling down. He falls face first into a pool of blood, and then he begins to see the body parts of his fallen comrades. He can do nothing but scream, shouting, "If anybody is out there!" Then from behind him, he hears Gaston, and he runs over to check if he's okay. Gaston tells him that he's alive, but not for long. All of the raiding soldiers got scattered about. He then asks what exactly is going on here. Where the hell are they? He goes on stating that he feels the same feeling they had when they all faced against Zod, like they were dealing with something unknown. Guts tells him to stop talking, and Gaston says it doesn't matter. The memories are starting to fade. The ones that he thinks he knows about was why Griffith felt so different from them, like he was a man out of a legend. Slowly as he talks, the words begin to trail off and his head begins to change shape. Suddenly, Gaston's head bursts, and a demon starts to crawl out of his skull. Guts grabs onto a sword and he tries to kill the demon, but then it crawls into the pool of blood and it swims away. As he looks back, Guts looks up the hill and he sees Pippin standing there and he runs over. As he gets up there, he finds Pippin's body, hollowed out. The hollow body is then split into two, and Guts sees the giant demon who ripped Pippin apart. The head of the monster lunges forward trying to bite down, and Guts barely escapes. As he falls back, he gets up and he looks around to see that he is surrounded. Each of the demons has the parts of people hanging from their mouths, and Guts continues to watch in horror. As the bodies begin to pile up, he grits his teeth and he screams, "You can all go back to hell!" And then he sees something that he wasn't expecting. He sees Casca. Some of the larger demons gather around as one holds her body up in the air. The claws are wrapped around her, cutting away at her flesh. His eyes turn white with rage, and he charges at the demons holding her. Like a whirlwind, he cuts and he carves through the demons who stand before him. Parts of the demons start to fly in every direction, and Guts runs through, making his way towards Casca. As he gets closer, the demons slash away at him and they grab onto him. He looks up and he sees a spiked tendril slowly making its way between her legs. He screams out for her and he pulls away, but as he does, another demon bites onto his left arm and holds him into place, forcing him to watch as the demons gather around her body. The Eclipse is only gonna get worse from here, and Guts and Casca are about to be scarred for their entire lives. Are you brave enough to stick around to see the next chapter of Berserk? Then subscribe to the channel and join us on Twitter at MangaStorian. I'll see you next time right here.